So here we got the Head Extreme Pro Racketball racket, ASP, so it's an adaptive string pattern racket, which basically means that you've got different options when stringing it. So we're not going to use every single grommet, so there's going to be one grommet here and here on either side that we're not going to use. Doing it as a two-piece, which is what's recommended. Important thing is what you've got 8 holes at the throat here. So 8 holes this side, 8 holes this side, so it's going to be 16 mains in total, and one string basically will go through a bottom hole, for example, and then it will loop around on the other side and it will come up here. On the one side, it doesn't matter if you use short side or long side, because we're doing it as a two-piece anyway, but on one side you start using the bottom holes on the throat, and on the other side of the throat we use the top side, so that way you've got a nice even weave. And what we want to have is a fan that goes that way, that way, that way, that way, or the other way if you want to do it the other way, rather than having things that go kind of crisscrossing in that way. So anyway, this is how to do this one, but they do differ, and this is going to be done at £31. So a bit like a Prince powering squash racket, just pulling that a bit just to get the tension out. A bit like a Prince powering squash racket or tennis racket. Can't pull at the throat because there's nothing to pull from here, so everything's double pulled on here. We're going to go on the outside of here, and this is really important. So the temptation is to go on the inside, which you can do, but it won't give the proper fan pattern. At the end it'll have the kind of pyramid fan on there. I'm going to come through the top here. Awkward double grommet system on here as well. You clamp it off. You might notice a bit of a gap here. Basically this racket takes up literally every single piece of the postage here, so there's not a single bit of room to spare on here. It's a very, very long racket. Also really important with this racket is to make sure you go evenly on each side. So you might see, or you might not be able to see, but we're starting at the top here, starting at the bottom here. So go to the next hole down over here. It does take a little while to thread it through as well. Like I said, just let it pull just a little bit longer. This is a constant pull electric machine, so it will keep pulling that string, which is the good news. Now string one ahead so we can carry on going back down this side. So though it's a bit fiddly, actually done correctly, this racket shouldn't in theory really take too long. Now move back onto the other side. Oops. One little tip when you're doing these rackets, where you might be able to have a better angle here, where you've got these holes here, they're tiny little holes here. So one little tip is really sharpen the end of your string on there. If you use a really soft multi-filament, it's actually quite painful, it's quite difficult to actually do it properly. So sharpen the ends, it just allows it to feed through a little bit easier. But to be honest, on racketball rackets, synthetic gut. This is a Prince Duraflex Neon string. Synthetic gut is actually a pretty good option to use on the basis that it's a bit firmer when you hit the ball. Obviously you've got a bigger ball in racquetball than you do in squash, so the multi-filaments don't have quite the same impact as that they do. So you just want something that's consistent with relatively decent tension on it, and this string seems to work pretty well. Oops. As you'll see, just cross it under there. So make sure you don't cross anything over. I've actually measured the string pretty well considering. So what we should be seeing now is the fan going all the right way, which is correct. I'm just going to add an extra 10% tension on here because it's going to be my tie off. Find the closest tie off hole, which is going to be this one. Tell you what, I'm going to go around the other side of that actually. Easier. So what I'm trying to do here, actually, I'm not sure if you can see it, but is just make sure that I'm not going to leave anything uneven with the string here. Give this a good pull because we don't want to lose too much tension. Just carefully release the clamp. Okay, and we have one side all done. Snip that off. So I'm trying to do this slowly just to demonstrate how I get it done. Right. Literally just got enough string on here. And for the sake of explaining how I measured the string, I've used 4 arm span lengths. I'm measuring the string on this. So it takes quite a lot of string. And then I'm using 3 arm lengths for the cross strings. So in total I'm using 7 arm span lengths worth, which is about the same as what you'd use to string a standard tennis racket. Snip it off. So again, another thing with this racket is to try your very hardest not to cross the strings over on the outside of the frame, so just pay plenty of attention to how the strings pull through. So I'm not sure if you can see, but it's all lined up pretty well on that side. yeah, there are lots of different ways to string this racket. But as some of you may have found out with Racketball rackets, the manufacturers like to keep stringers on their toes by making the patterns as awkward as possible. I think with Racketball, the most important thing is control. So whereas in tennis and squash, quite often might string a racket to give somebody a bit more power, to give somebody a bit more control maybe. I think in Racketball, because you're effectively playing with a big bouncy ball, I think it's really important to have control way over power, because you can get plenty of power in a Racketball racket anyway. Sometimes the trick with Racketball is to actually take the pace off the ball as opposed to adding more to it. Again, what you're probably seeing here is me just stringing one ahead, so I'm tensioning each string individually. I'm just pulling the string through one ahead. It's a bit less friction, a bit kinder to the strings. I mean, synthetic gut doesn't matter quite as much, if I'm being honest with you, because they're pretty tough and they don't tend to mark up. But multi-filaments especially, this is a really good method because it stops string burn as part of least resistance. One thing with Racketball rackets especially as well, because they've got these weird patterns on them, is if you look at the mains, look at the crosses, if there's some symmetry there, if things look pretty even, chances are you're probably doing it right. I mean, I do see a lot of these rackets where they're just all over the place really. But the key to these rackets really is preparation, so doing your homework before you cut the strings out. Trying to find examples of rackets if you've never strung one of them before as well. That's a really good tip. Sometimes maybe just take a picture from your phone as well of before you've strung it. So you see we're getting quite a lot of traffic down here now. Little tip as well, if you've got a machine, I mean, as you can see this one's pretty flush on there, but if you've got a machine where the posts don't quite reach, find things like string dampeners, elastic bands. You can actually make things, put them in between as blockers if you haven't got an adapter. I mean, I've got a few adapters, but use a blocker, use something just to make sure that you've got all the bases covered. Otherwise what you'll find is just the racket will rattle around in the posts, and you don't want that because it's a bit bad for tension maintenance and probably the racket as well. more to do. Extra 10% at the bottom. And then we're going to tie it off. You can actually get the string through that hole. This is where we use the bent nose pliers just to get in there. There we go. It's a little tip. I'm not sure if you can see that, but if ever you struggle to get the string through because it's tight, use some bent nose pliers or even regular pliers. Just push gently at the side. If you push them too far away, you'll just bend the string. I'm just going to trim a bit of this off before tying because we've got a bit left over. So what I like about the Prince Duraflex string is it's actually got quite good performance on it, quite a lot of bite, but also when you're tying off, it's one of the few synthetic guts that actually doesn't slip on the knots, so you don't have any danger of knots coming undone unduly. I mean, I'm using Parnell knot anyway, which is pretty bulletproof, but gonna release it. And voila. Just gonna straighten the strings out quickly. That top one we'll do after. Get the clamps out of the way. Just drop them back into the clamps. All done. There we go. So I'll show you what I mean, give you a little kind of close up. I'm not sure if you can see that, but you can see the string should always be facing the same way when doing these fan patterns, so always get them there, but you can probably see all the different holes that it goes through there. All done.